Hello everyone. In this session we will understand AD or AuthNet, and we will precisely understand how we can bind our database or its data with a control. So let's get started. So I have a new project and I'll name it with DataGridview demo and hit OK. So it will create one new project in Windows form. Okay, so I have some properties, references, my form1 and program.cs. So the first thing that I need to do when I create new project is I'll drag and drop one data control. Okay, so I'll use something called as DataGridview. Now DataGridview is a control which looks similar to that of a table, a blank empty table, where you can display all records from your data table. Okay, so if you're having one table in your database, you can load the complete table inside this grid view. When you will see the output of this form1, this grid view, right now it's completely blank, it's grayed out, but eventually when you run this, it will give you a kind of design, looks very similar to that of a table. Okay, it is having a one header, then having some columns, some rows, and something like that. Okay, and what data we get into this? We will take the database data. Okay, so for that we exactly need one database, right? So you can go to your project, this one, right click and then add a new item. Inside this new item you are having so many entries over here. You choose data and then you will see there are two types of database, local database and service based database. You see local database having an extension of SDF and service based database having an extension of .mdf. Now the difference, these are inbuilt databases in Visual Studio. It'll come pre-installed with this exe. Okay, so they have two database, local and service based. Now local database, it's a compact version of SQL Server database. Okay, they don't have much more functionalities compared to that of service based database. So for a large project you can use service based database. I preferably not prefer this, but that's okay for our demo, right? So service based database having so many entries, so many functionalities, so many features that you can use in your project. Local database is having only two functionalities. I think one is you can create your table and can work and can play with your tables. Okay, and there is one more functionality that I don't remember yet, but a service based database having so many entries. So we'll use service based database. I'll change the name, my db demo. Okay, and I add it. Once you add your database, it's going to be loaded in your solution explorer one here. It's taking time. Okay, so it opens data source configuration wizard. Well, actually we don't need it, so we'll close this. And you see my dvdemo.mdf, it's been loaded in the solution explorer. Now this entry is also being loaded into the server explorer. So to open server explorer you can use control enter and s. It will load server explorer and you can see my database, my dbdemo.mdf. You can expand this and you will see so many functionalities inside this database. One is database diagram, you can get tables, views, stored procedures, functions, synonyms, types and assemblies. With local database you will not get these many functionalities, so that's why we had chosen .mdf file. Okay, so now we need to create one table, right? We need one data table. So we'll go to the table. I'll right click on this and add new table. I go to the column name, I'll say ID and then I'll choose the data type int. Next column going to be name and it's having varchar 50 and then let's say city and varchar 50. Now I go to ID and I make it primary key, set primary key. Now one more thing we need to do is we don't need this ID to be manually entered by user. Okay, 1 2 3 4, we need that it automatically works, it automatically get into the increment part 1 2 3, it automatically loaded that 1 2 3. Okay, we don't need that user specify that this entry is 1, this entry is 2, this entry is 3. So we'll select the property of this ID column. So you click on this, I mean just put the cursor over here in this ID column and go to the column properties. In the below part you're having identity specification. You see, you expand this identity specification and you see is identity, you make it yes, and you see identity increment, it's going to be started with 1. Once you do this yes, okay, it's going to be incremented by 1. So when you put the entry in the data table, that is the automatic ID is going to be generated 1, and the next will it will generate 2, and the next will generate 3, next will generate 4. It's going to be incremented every time you enter one entry into the data table. Okay, so now you save this table, Control S, and I'll name it TBL data grid. Okay, this is my table name, and I press OK, and you see this table is going to be loaded inside this table. So you refresh your Server Explorer and then you expand this table, and you see there is your table TBL data grid. You expand it and your columns are here, ID, name, and city. Okay, so we need some data inside this data table, so that data is going to be loaded inside this data grid view, right? That's our requirement, that's how we need to do. So right click on this TBL data grid, your table, and there is one entry, that is show table data. And now inside this you can put any entries that you want to. See, ID is going to be null right now, but it is going to be incremented every time you fulfill this name and city. So I give some name, give another name. You see ID gets incremented 1. You put another entry, see it's going to be it's going to be incremented again. So another entry, another entry. Okay, that's it. Okay, you close this, show your table, you close it. Okay, now there must be some problem when you initially create this table. It may be something like you forgot to include primary key, or maybe identity specification, and you save the table and you again want to get into the table and need some changes. Okay, you want to do that changes, you want to update your table. So how exactly you can do? You click on your table, right click on that, and there is an entry, open table definition. You click on that and it will load it, it will load again your design part. Okay, so now you can change something, whatever you want to change, maybe data type, maybe column name, or maybe anything. Okay, so then there might be one more problem. Once you update this table definition and you save this table, there is one error that says you cannot save the a data table. It gives you one pop-up which prevents you to update your table. So I mean to overrule that, or to remove that error, or to remove that restriction, what exactly you can do? You go to the tools here and options, and then you go to the database tool, and there is something called as table and database designer. You click on that and there is this checkbox, prevent saving changes that require table recreation. This is specifically to remove that restriction where you want to update your data table. Okay, so earlier it was checked, you need to uncheck it and save it. Okay, you uncheck it and press OK. That's it. Once you do that, make control save, it will let you save your table. Okay, so close this. Now we are ready and we get in the design part and we will do something here. Okay, so now this is your grid view. Click on your grid view and there is this small button over here. Can you see this small button? Okay, now click on that and then edit column. Make sure that your Server Explorer is is pinned here, so that you can see this here. This is your table name and your columns are here. So now in this added column you need to add the header text and some column and row. So that's why we are adding those columns that are there in this table. Okay, so add, and the first column is going to be what? Is going to be ID. So you give the same name. See here, ID is going to be same here in this part, this name. So I'll say ID. It's same, okay? And in the header text, you can do anything, whatever you want to print. So I'll say this is my student ID. So this is student ID, and make add, okay? And then the next part, this is my name. So I give a name, and then header text is going to be student name. So this is my header text. Next is city. So I'll give the same name. See here, CITY. So it's in small. So it's again in the lowercase city. I'll say student city. Add it. Okay. Three entries are here. Close it. Now you see there are three entries: student ID, name, and city. Exactly our table is here. So now you need to change one more property. That property name is data property name. So you click on this student ID, whatever the the column you're having. You select this and go to the data property name. Okay, data property name, and give the same name as your data table is having. Data table column is having. So I'll give ID, and then next is student name. I'll say name. Then student city, and I'll give the same name, city. Okay, so now hit OK. So you can see now your grid view is somehow loaded like this. It's having student ID, student name, and student city. And this specific row is for entries, whatever the data is your table persist. That data is going to be loaded here in these three columns. Okay, so now I go to the code part. I press F7. So now we are in the .cs file where we will code this grid view. Okay, so this is ADO.NET, and there are three database providers. One is SQL client, one is OLEDB client, and one is ODBC client. Right now we are using what type of database? We are using SQL Server. You can see here, and that's why we will use the namespace using system.data. You can see there are three parts: ODBC, OLEDB, and SQL client. So we'll use SQL client. Okay, now based on this SQL client, there are some steps that we need to clear it up with this SQL client. Okay, so what exactly these steps are? So these steps are, I'll open the notepad. Okay, so you are having using system.data.sql client. Okay, so this is the namespace that you import. Now in this namespace we are having some steps. So we are having SQL connection. Well, this connection class basically connect the database with your application. So we are having this SQL connection, and then we will use SQL command. Now this command is basically to create your SQL queries. Okay, all queries going to be loaded inside this command. Okay, SQL queries. Now once your command is done, we need to make a bridge between the database and with your application, and that can be done with the help of SQL data adapter. Okay, and keep that in mind. Once you create your SQL connection, this command need that connection. So we will pass the SQL connection object. So if I having con as my SQL connection object, then I need to pass this con object inside this SQL command. In a very similar way, I need to pass the command of this SQL command. Okay, so the what do you call this object of this SQL command. So I'll say this is the object, so I need to pass this CMD over here. And after that SQL data adapter, we need to create one empty data table. So I'll say data table, and the object is DT. Okay, and this object is SDA. Okay, so now we'll be having data table as an empty table, and now we need to fill this data table. and how exactly we can fill is with the help of sda.fill. Once you do that, okay, once your data table has been filled with this SDA, we just need to bind that that data with our control, and our control is DataGridview, and we can bind it with the help of data source. That's it. Okay, this is exactly we're gonna do in our code. These are some of the steps that we need to perform when we are doing or making a binding with any control. Okay, so let's get into the code part. So I'll create one method, and method name is, let me say display data. This is my, or let me say it is refresh data. This is my method. Okay, and now I'll make this method alter enter, and then generate a method for me. Okay, once you do that, remove this part, throw new exception. So the first step is, you can see here, the first step is SQL connection. And how exactly I can get this connection? You write here SQL connection, you see, and then con equals to new SQL connection. Okay, so now this SQL connection need one string here. You see, it needs string connection string. So I need to pass this double quotes, and I need this connection string. So to get this connection string, you can go to your database here in the Server Explorer. You go to your database, right click on that, and go to the properties. In properties, we have this connection string. Okay, so you copy this connection string, you copy it, and then paste it in between these double quotes. Okay, that's your connection string. Now there's some problem with this connection string, so to fulfill that or to remove that error, what we can do, the first thing is, the first error is because of this, single slashes. So to remove that, you can use verbatim string. So you pass this, this @ and because of that reason this slash is going to be removed. Okay, the second thing you need to do is you need to remove this double quotes. You can see here before this before your path. So you remove that, and then again remove from this mydb.mdf, your database file, remove that double quotes. Okay, now your error is going to be gone. Okay, so your connection string is completely it's loaded successfully. Okay, the second part is SQL command. Okay, so we'll use SQL command here, SQL command cmd, that's my object of this SQL command. Okay, equals to new SQL command, and now I need to pass one query here. You can see here, what do we have here? String command text and SQL connection object. Okay, so I will pass select star from, what's my table name, tbl underscore data grid. Okay, and that's why I opened this Server Explorer, so that you can see the table name, and then comma, you pass the connection, SQL connection object, I'll say con. Okay, and that's your command done. Next part is what do we have here? We have SQL data adapter. So we'll write SQL data adapter SDA equals to new SQL data adapter, and what it needs the SQL command object. So what is the SQL command object here? CMD. Here, see here, CMD. So I'll pass CMD over. Okay, next is, what do we need? We need one table, data table, an empty data table. So I'll say data table dt equals to new data table. So now the thing is, you see, we are having one SQL connection, we are having one query, select star from tbl data grid. Now the complete data from this table is been loaded inside this command. Okay, so the data is with cmd. Now we are passing cmd to SQL data adapter. So now the data, that complete data, id, name and city, is with SDA. So the data is with SDA. Now we are creating one data table that is completely empty right now. And then what is the next step? we are filling that data table. So you see our data is with SDA, so I will write SDA dot fill. What I need to fill? My data table. So I'll pass my DT. Okay. So now the complete data, that is ID, name and city, is with this table, inside this table. Okay. So now I'll simply say data grid view one dot data source. It's a binding property, data source equals to, where is my data? In DT, so I'll simply pass DT. Okay, so DT data source, it's a data source, please load it inside this data grid view 1. Okay, so now your complete this select star from has been done, and once you run it, you will see that all entries that you had put it inside this table has been loaded inside that grid view. So you run it. Okay. Oh, you see all entries are here, 1 2 3 4. We have 4 entries inside this table, and we have this test 1, test 2, test 3, and ABC 1 2 3. Okay, so you had loaded the complete data from your table inside this grid view. Okay, and now you can use this in various other projects that you need the same functionality. You want to load a data from your table, from your database inside this grid view, you can do the same exact thing. Okay, I hope you understand it. Thank you so much for listening to me.